I do have children to care for. Becoming an attendant to the Moon Prince would mean spending all her time in Sugen's company. Her own mother, who had been one of the Moon Prince's nursemaids along with Sugen, had told her enough stories about the woman to make her think twice. As things stood, Sugen treated Maomao with professional politeness. However, if Maomao started working directly for her, she could become truly fearsome. No, that is a shame. I will just have to find someone else then, Sugen said. She did not sound very disappointed about it though. She already seemed to know who that someone else should be. Sugen wrapped up the treats for Maomao, and the younger woman showed herself out of the pavilion. An appetizing scent wafted from the package. However, it seemed somehow lacking compared to what she had tasted a few minutes before. She puzzled over it as she looked up at the sky. Looks like another clear day tomorrow, she said. She wondered if the Go tournament had been a success. Then she looked back at the treats, and when she pictured the joy on her children's faces, she couldn't help but smile. Chapter 16, The Go Contest Part 2. I want to go home, Maomao thought as she stirred a mixture of honey, ginger and fresh squeezed tangerine juice. She was in the same place she had been the day before at the Go tournament. She was in a corner of the theatre, making drinks as quickly as she could. She had been on duty yesterday and was supposed to be off today. What about her plans to hunker down in the dormitory and read the medical treatises Dr. Liu had lent her? And to be here of all places, Yao and Nen were there too. Like Maomao the day before, they had been sent over by Dr. Liu. However, since Nen enjoyed Go, she seemed to be having a good time. Maomao wished she could be working with the two of them. However, her father had told her, I need you over here, and assigned her to the theatre. Do we need to mention the reason? Maomao seethed as she remembered being dragged in here yesterday. When the old man saw her, he made a commotion, just as he always did. It fell to Maomao's father to calm him down and resolve the issue. Many Go boards were set up in the theatre. People who had won their matches sat in the spectator seating, facing off against each other. Those who continued to win could move up to the stage. Only a few people had reached the stage the day before, so the freak strategists' matches were held separately. More people were reaching the coveted platform today. At that moment, the strategist was taking on 3 people at once. One might expect that to be confusing, but it was very much in character for him. He could hardly get by in day-to-day life, but he sent his opponents away from their boards one after another with their heads bowed. He would occasionally shoot little glances in Maomao's direction between moves, but she ignored him. Everything ready, Maomao? Asked Yao, coming over with a kettle. Yeah, here. I need more tangerines though, I am all out. She poured the honeyed drink into the kettle. Sure thing, also yes, I would like to sit somewhere else. She felt bad staying inside while Yao and Nen had to rush in and out constantly. Oh, it is okay, it is no problem. Yao pounded her bountiful chest as if to say just leave everything to us. I am more worried about our snack supply. Is it holding up? The girls went around to see if anyone was feeling unwell. They also handed out snacks to the participants. The entrance fee seemed to have been calculated to cover the cost. I'm not sure, Maomao said, looking in the direction of the freak strategist, but I expect it will run out in a hurry. He had a large pile of mooncakes and bean buns next to him. Playing board games required a lot of thinking, and that made a person want sweets. That was one reason people handed out snacks, but Maomao suspected Lahan had a hand in this plan. Both the buns and mooncakes were filled with sweet potato. Sweet potatoes were not commonly found in the public markets. This was likely part of his plan to distribute them widely. The treats were sweet enough that you could reduce the amount of sugar in a recipe by including them. This would make the overall cost of ingredients cheaper. It wasn't only the tournament participants who could enjoy the treats. Stalls were also set up to sell them to other visitors. People could buy them if they liked the flavor. He had been very thorough. How are things outside? Maomao asked. There are no real problems. A few fights broke out when people kept losing, and some kids have fallen down in the crowds and hurt themselves. Fights, that was to be expected. You could not have this many people in one place without a bit of commotion. It did not get worse than a few bruises. The soldiers were all gathered here, so they were dispersed quickly. I suppose that does count as working. Yao did not look very impressed. She took the full kettle and said, sweets and tangerines then, correct? Yes, please. Maomao watched her go. Excuse me, miss. Someone called from the entrance. I won. Maomao went to check them in. She thought to herself they could at least hire one receptionist. Lahan, who had delegated all this work, was nowhere to be seen. Maomao collected the name tags of the new guy's defeated opponents. In this tournament, when you won, your opponent gave you a tag with their name on it. You needed to collect 3 such tags to enter the main tournament venue. Not all victories were equal, however. Some people simply kept working over weaker opponents. That wasn't technically against the rules. When Lahan was asked about it, he said, if they paid the entry fee, I don't care. It doesn't really matter. If they aren't very good themselves, they will find out in here. If you lost, you had to go back out to the square and start again. Maomao gave the newcomer a fresh tag, a drink, and a mooncake. She said, there is someone waiting for a game in the seats to the right. You can go ahead and start playing against them. You did not get to pick your opponents. The guy in front of Maomao looked less than thrilled about it, but he accepted it and went over to the seating area. If he had breathed one word of complaint, Maomao would have had him out of that theatre on the spot. Her father, as well as several of the freak's people, were stationed around to make sure the eccentric did not get up to anything. Excuse me, said a man, hesitantly approaching Maomao. Do you think I could ask for more mooncakes? He wasn't a participant. He was the freak's minion, a man who had recently replaced Rikusen as the strategist's aide. He was of average height and build. He didn't look very soldierly. This was the same man who had been at his wits' end when the strategist managed to poison himself with his own juice. Rikusen had been a handsome man, but he could be firm when necessary. This man looked much easier to push around. All right, Maomao said, though her expression showed exasperated disbelief. Had he already used up his entire supply? She brought out some buns, and it was obvious how much of a chore it had been. Here you go. No, the minion seemed to be trying to say something difficult. Perhaps you could bring them to Master Lakan yourself. Maomao was completely silent. One look at her made him reconsider. Sorry, you are obviously very busy. I will take them myself. At least he was quick to understand. Maomao, someone behind her said sadly. She found her father standing there. Do not make that face. What face? She brought her hands to her face and found that her temples were tense. Her lips were twisted back hideously. Oh, sorry, she said to the subordinate. Her father looked toward the infamous old fart. Has Lakan been feeling unwell? He asked. You can tell. The minion looked at him. In joyous anticipation of this tournament, he has been very uncharacteristically working relentlessly. Maomao was quiet. Just how little work did the bastard normally do? He normally arrives at the office sometime around noon. Then he shows himself out again before the sun sets. But recently he has been at his desk as much as anyone else, and he hasn't even been napping. The boy is indeed working hard then. He typically sleeps away half the day, Liu Omen remarked. So it came down to the fact that the freak was finally shouldering a normal workload. Maomao's old man continued to look fixedly in the strategist's direction. Evidently, the freak was looking fatigued, though Maomao could not see it. He became so immersed in his games of Go that it was hard to tell. I suppose it is back to work tomorrow, but might I ask you to be so kind as to allow him some time to sleep? When he does not get enough rest, his powers of judgment decline quickly, Liu Min said. Judgment. Doesn't he usually just flail around? Maomao grumbled. This provoked a melancholy droop of the eyebrows from her old man. He had always had a soft spot for that freak. I'm going to go check on things outside, Maomao, he said. Got it. I'll call you if anything comes up, or flag down the nearest soldier. Maomao assumed she and her old man were here because Lahan had calculated they would serve as a useful bulwark against the freak strategist. The fart was behaving himself at the moment. Liu Hemen evidently thought it was more important to see if anyone outside was feeling poorly. Go slow, all right. There are a lot of people out there. I'll be fine. It was easy to say, but her old man had a bad knee and walked with a cane. She munched on a mooncake and fretted about whether he would trip and fall in the crowd. They should have provided rice crackers too, she said. The mooncake was tasty, but it was too sweet. Maomao went back to mixing honeyed drinks, still cherishing a wish for salt. It was afternoon, and the numbers stood at 3 people who had gotten sick from focusing too intensely on their games. 2 people had started fights over allegations of cheating, and 1 child had fallen down when he bumped into a gawking bystander. The number of people in the theatre increased, decreased, and then increased again. Some of them showed up 2 or 3 separate times. "Are you sure he's not cheating?" Maomao hissed to Lahan after she admitted 1 man for the 4th time. "Nothing of the sort," replied Lahan. He was the organizer of all this festivity and looked quite pleased with himself. He was certainly raking it in, Maomao thought. The entry fee was small, but he must have other ways of recovering his investment. Maomao scowled at the tousle-haired man with his round glasses. "And here you are making me work for free. No, you will be getting compensation. I have confirmed that we are in the black," so she had guessed right about the source of his good mood. "That man you just admitted is a professional. Winning 3 games against amateur opponents is easy for him. It's the work of a moment, though he has been reduced to playing in the corner of a pub to earn his drinking money." Maomao demonstrated her disinterest by checking their remaining stock of buns and teacups. "You could afford to act a little more engaged in a conversation, you know. Couldn't you muster a wow, really? Or you know everything, don't you? Maybe that's my honored older brother for you." "Where is the love? You really think you'd feel flattered if I said any of those things? Point taken." "I would feel thoroughly mocked," which, as far as Maomao was concerned, meant it was better not to engage in fatuous flattery in the first place. "It hardly matters. I do not think you are the type to let your guard down enough for anyone to insinuate themselves with you that way. A most perceptive little sister you are." Maomao ignored him. He was born with his mouth open, and his mother knew that if she tried to argue with him, he might never stop talking. Lahan seemed disappointed that there wasn't more to discuss. He spread his arms and shrugged his shoulders. He said his racket might be winning wagers on Go games now, but he was once an instructor of the highest degree. He spoke in the past tense as Maomao had somehow expected. "Let me guess. Some worthless old man defeated him and he lost his job. Right on the money." Apparently someone important who wanted to diminish my respected father persuaded the instructor to have a match against him. The result was that the man lost quite badly. What a shame for him. It must have been discouraging to work so hard to improve, only to be defeated again. If it truly cost 10 silver pieces to challenge the strategist, Maomao worried the man might go bankrupt. She was suddenly struck by a bad feeling. I wonder if most of the challengers in this tournament are people who hold grudges against the old man. That would explain the extensive security. You are half right. Someone could try to attack him at any moment. That is why the guards are always vigilant. But as long as they do not stab him directly through the heart and kill him with 1 strike, my honored uncle should be able to defend himself. Of all the foolish, unimportant reasons to summon my father, she stomped her foot down on Lahan's toes. "Ow, ow, 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 stop that." Realizing another injury would just increase her work, Maomao relented. "And what is the other half?" she asked. Lahan held his foot gingerly and made a show of rubbing his abused toes as he said, "Only the Go Sage stands any realistic chance of victory against my father in this game. If any other player could beat him, even if they had to use this tournament to do it, it would certainly get my father's attention." Get his attention. Yes, they were dealing with a man who saw other people's faces as nothing more than ghost stones. Even the thought that he might remember someone was more than enough to play upon. "Well, that rumour took on a life of its own," Lahan said. His already narrow eyes narrowed even further behind his glasses. "People were saying that if you could defeat Kanlakan at a game of Go, he would grant any one request you asked." Maomao's jaw hung open and she couldn't seem to get it to shut. "I have never heard anything so absurd in my life. Who got that idea? And where did they get it? One wonders." Lahan did not quite meet her eyes, leaving Maomao with a near certainty that he was the source of the rumour. Given that his money was tied up in this venture, it seemed he was prepared to do anything he could to recoup his investment. "And just look at all the greedy people who believed that story," Maomao grumbled. At just that moment a new competitor arrived. "Is this where I check in?" the newcomer asked. Their voice sounded like heavenly music drifting down from above. Maomao looked up quietly and saw a man wearing a stuffy-looking mask. The corners of his eyes were crinkled as he smiled. On the reception table in front of her, he had laid his opponent's tags. They were proof of victory in 3 games. Lahan gave the man a careful look. He presumably knew who she was and seemed to think the mask was a shame. He said, "Here. Your participation prize." Maomao gave him tea and a mooncake, but she could not shake a sense of unease. She remembered what he had said the last time they had spoken. "I will take the tea, but I will pass on the snack. My attendant will bring some for me. Just bring it by later." "All right," Maomao said after a beat. That was all she could say, knowing to whom she was speaking. "Then please line up over there and wait for a game." Lahan was positively beaming. If there was a pretty face nearby, he did not care if it belonged to a man or a woman. "You are right, they are greedy schlubs and also very gullible." He looked at her as if to say, "How about that?" He looked so pleased with himself, in fact, that she felt compelled to stomp on his toes again. In his first game in the theatre, the masked man, also known as Jinshi, found himself matched against a plump middle-aged man. This man gave his masked opponent uneasy looks throughout the game. Jinshi won easily. "I'd heard he wasn't bad, but it turns out he is very good," Lahan commented. "You think so?" Maomao said. She had served Jinshi for a time, but she did not recall him playing that much Go. He was an accomplished person and knew the basics of the game, perhaps a little better than average. "Are you sure the man he was playing against wasn't just not very good?" Jinshi had won so easily that someone might suspect the middle-aged man of getting there by luck. "Yes, perhaps. It was a lucky draw," Lahan said. Jinshi bowed politely over the board, then headed to his next opponent. "Are you not going to punish the man for cheating?" Maomao asked. "If he wants to return, he will have to pay the entrance fee again." "Why would I drive off a cash cow?" Maomao did not say anything to that. Lahan was hopeless. "Oh, I am joking," he said. "However he got here, if he coughs up the coin, he can face my father. Where is the problem? I thought they had to win before you squeezed even more money out of them. Teaching games are a different matter from a proper match. It is an open question whether my father understands what it means to teach. Do not worry, I will make sure NN gets her game another day." Lahan was taking quick glances in the strategist's direction. "Another day? I thought it was supposed to be later today after this was all done." "Yes, well. I think he might be reaching his limit. My guess is that he will go right to sleep as soon as the tournament is over." Lahan began working his mental abacus. Maomao's old man had said that the freak slept away half of every day, but to drop off the minute his work was done. A child could stay awake better than that. Maomao had heard about an illness that caused people to fall asleep unexpectedly, but that didn't seem to be what was happening with the old man. Meanwhile, Lahan was muttering to himself. "If we tell those who have already paid that he will visit another day, or that we will bring him to them individually, that would be a problem. There has to be some way to knock him out, then wake him up again." "No, that won't work." Maomao gave him an exasperated look, then turned to watch Jinshi, who had found his next opponent. "He won't beat that one," she said. It was the professional player from earlier. She kept one eye on their match, wondering absently what had moved him to take part in this tournament. A crowd was gathering around the board. A man in a mask aroused curiosity. Maomao knew a thing or two about shogi, but not so much about Go, so she contented herself with doing check-in and keeping an eye out for anyone feeling poorly. She wished people would tidy up after themselves before they left. She thought this as she spotted crumbs on a number of the seats. She was just cleaning them up when a disappointed groan came from the spectators surrounding Jinshi. Much of the crowd consisted of other players who had given up hope of victory in the tournament. Maomao went over to Lahan, who had worked his way in among them. "What happened?" she asked. He played a decent game, but this was just the wrong opponent. He has him on the run now. In other words, Jinshi had lost. "I see," Maomao said, nodding. It was about what she had expected. Is there no hope of an upset? It is conceivable, but unlikely so long as his opponent does not make any serious mistakes. And I do not think this is someone who is likely to make enough of a rookie error to exploit. Just as Lahan said that, there was a buzz in the crowd. The mask, so out of place there, came off. Lustrous black hair danced in the air, and the aroma of perfume woven into elegant robes drifted along with it. She was like a heavenly nymph descending from the clouds, her robes fluttering. It was a risible analogy, but inescapable because it was true. Haven't seen that for a while, Maomao thought, observing a sight she had witnessed ad nauseum in the rear palace. It was Jinchi at his sparkliest. A collective intake of breath rippled through the crowd. People wanted to gasp or exclaim, but the sounds caught in their throats. The figure before them seemed like a dweller in the heavenly realm, normally seen only in picture scrolls. He was so lovely that at first glance one might have mistaken him for a woman. However, the lump in his throat and his broad shoulders revealed his gender. A modicum of disappointment was detected amidst the breathless amazement. On Jinchi's right cheek was a scar that would never fade, like a scratch on an otherwise flawless gem. Jinchi's beauty had been exceptional even among the many and varied flowers of the rear palace.